and welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by David Wolman, and only David Wolman today. Devin Hassan, a little under the weather to begin the week, so yes, just a two-man show for today's episode. We are recording at, I believe, 11:54 a.m. on a Monday, on Columbus Day. So, yes, if anybody's got a long weekend that they're enjoying, hope you guys are having a good time with that. So, yes, we are, we're here to talk a little bit of high school football, as per usual on Monday. It's a nice little recap episode as we look back on the happenings from the prior week on the high school gridiron. Where 3 weeks are in the books somehow, some way. It's feel like we're walking on eggshells a little bit more than usual because it feels like more and more each week you're seeing a few more games just continue to fall through the cracks. And we had some high profile ones that did not get to take place on Friday. Most notably, at least within our coverage area, Prosper and DeSoto. This was a game that we talked about and previewed last week as part of our it was a game of the week candidate and whatnot, a game between two state-ranked teams that we were very much looking forward to. And then Allen Cedar Hill fell through the cracks as well, and that was a pretty big domino to fall with in the case of Allen now, Allen, top 5 team in the state, and now they will not play football until the end of the month. So they
October 30th, right?
Yes, there was a bit of and obviously these are all related to COVID-19, matters within the program. So word came down. This was a bit of a late one to materialize with Allen and Cedar Hill, as far as that game getting canceled. And then in addition, Allen announced over the weekend that their game against Tyler Legacy, which is supposed to be this week, that's getting canceled as well. So and then Allen has its bye week the following week during the first week of district play in 5-6A. So yeah. Allen now is going to go 3 straight weeks without a game. So,
and they were rhythm right before this happened.
They were coming off a really, really emphatic performance against Atascocita, just firing on all cylinders, looking like the Allen of old. And you wonder now if there's any sort of momentum, that you'll be, I guess, any sort of rhythm and continuity that you've that's lost now with going that long in between games. Definitely a fascinating development. Obviously, given that this Allen team is one that figures to try to contend for a state championship and whatnot. With Prosper, I know they were very much looking forward to that game against DeSoto. Was a nice little measuring stick game coming off that big win against Euless Trinity. But that game against DeSoto was a chance to really see what you could do against what was, what's one of the better teams in the state. I believe DeSoto is ranked number 6 right now in Class 6A. So to not get that opportunity, and then their game, the following week against Arlington Lamar, that game got canceled as well. So they'll also have to now go with a little bit of a break before getting to play. But it just feels like every week you kind of talk about these games, and we want to believe that they're going to happen. We try to put some thought into previewing them and whatnot, but at the same time, I think just it's in the back of everyone's mind.
It could even happen like the night before the game. So we just, even if we do a preview about it, we just don't know if it's going to happen.
Well, that was the case with Prosper and DeSoto. We had already recorded the episode, and we outlined the preview and whatnot. And then I think it was that same day when I got home, and then you get the word trickles down that I believe it was Matt Stepp with Dave Campbell's Texas Football who broke the news that their game with DeSoto was being canceled, and then Prosper ISD has to release its statement and whatnot, and it's who knows. But nevertheless, though, obviously there was still plenty that happened as far as games to cover on Friday, and we both got to see some stuff Thursday and Friday. So we can just talk a little bit of just kind of reactions to what we saw, for last week from in our coverage area.
Sure.
District 5-5A got underway last week, and there's obviously a lot more to 5-5A than just what happened on the football field, as we'll get to in a bit. But you got to see the Colony in their district opener against Denton. This was as far as the games that did get played last week in that district. You had the Colony defeating Denton. It was 31-7.
31-7, yes.
You had Wakeland all over Centennial, 35-7, and then Lone Star, they get their first win of the season in emphatic fashion, crushing Heritage 73-21. What were your impressions on the Colony though, and what they showed against Denton?
It's a team that's still a little bit inexperienced. They have 17 new starters on this team this year, so obviously it's a big turnover from last year from the team that they lost that went to the playoffs. But I mean, it's a team that you're seeing every more week that their continuity's coming a little bit longer together. I was really impressed with their defense. Even as a defense, you can maybe get a little bit frustrated, a little bit deterred, especially if your offense isn't producing points, because you went to the Denton territory 5 times in the first half. You only came away with 1 touchdown.
Wow.
So I mean, like as a defense, like you should like it should work back and forth. It's like you help me, I'll help you. But that's a team that remains steadfast. They're not going to give up. I think they understand it's a little bit of a process to get everything together. They've got some thumpers on that team, man.
Okay.
Kyle Taylor, who transferred back there, he's almost at 40 tackles to 3 games already.
Wow.
And he had some hard hits on that team. They tackled very well. The Coco Brown, the sophomore standout running back that Denton had, he rushed for 100. I think it was almost 180 yards the previous week and 3 touchdowns. They held him less than 60 yards.
Wow. Okay.
So they tackled very well. They're very physical on defense. Offensively, it took a while for things to get clicking, but they finally got they had a field goal there in the third quarter that kind of really helped out to finally get a little bit of momentum. They were up 10-7, and then they blew it out in the fourth quarter. So this is a team like Coach Rangel was telling me, they're not going to blow away from people early, but I was really impressed what they did, especially in the fourth quarter. Even throughout the game, they had some really good drives. They have a new quarterback, Johnny Roberson. The throws that he makes, it just looks so effortless at all. Like a ball that's going towards the sideline. Sometimes I don't know if it's going to be overthrown, but it's just right there. He just it's a little flick of the wrist and it's right there. I'm impressed with him. They had another transfer, Keone Robertson. He had a big 60-yard, catch and run there in the first half that kind of helped lead to a touchdown right there. So this team's got some good parts to it right there. I think as it builds throughout the district schedule right there, this is a team that can contend for another playoff spot.
For me, let's see. For my game Friday, David, I got some bad news for you, man. The dream of 16-0 for Plano West is officially dead.
Do we have any tissues?
It was so they Plano West, after a 2-0 start, their first 2-0 start since I believe it was 2015 was the stat. They met head first with Little Elm, a team making its debut in Class 6A. My first chance to get to see Little Elm, I think ever. I'd never covered a Little Elm game up until last Friday. This was a lot was made of the defensive effort that Plano West had showed early in the year. You shut out Wiley 28-0. They beat North Mesquite 28-14. Meanwhile, Little Elm, they also had a shutout on their record
against LD Bell,
against LD Bell. It was 37-0. They the defense, especially. I mean, listen, what happened against North Forney? That's going to happen to a lot of teams. They just got down pretty big early on and just couldn't dig themselves out of a hole against North Forney. Heck, happened to Frisco Lone Star.
Look what happened to them.
Yeah. But nevertheless, though, it was much more of a return to the norm from what Little Elm expects out of itself against Plano West. This was a 23-9 game, not a traditional football score in any respect, 23-9. The big turning point, man, I was thinking, so it was the week prior against Prosper when they beat Euless Trinity that I came onto the podcast talking about Mason Jolly and the moments that he had there in the third quarter where he made significant plays on defense, special teams, and offense, all within a couple minutes of one another. And just thinking, I'd never seen a player manage to impact all 3 phases in such a short amount of time like that. But you saw the same thing out of Little Elm as a team against Plano West. So to start the second half, Little Elm goes 3-0 on its first series. So not great, but they're able to get a heck of a punt, and they pin Plano West inside the 5-yard line. On Plano West's first offensive snap, there's a little bit of a miscommunication and the handoff and whatnot, but results in a fumble that Little Elm proceeds to not pounce on. West gets the ball, but the ball's fumbled into the end zone, and the result is a safety. So at the time, it was 9-7 Plano West. Now it is 9-9 tie game, and then Little Elm gets the ball back. Very first play of Little Elm's offensive series, they chuck it deep. I want to say it was a 64-yard touchdown from John Mateer to Dylan Evans. Plano West DB took a bit of a questionable angle on it, basically tried to jump it, just did not time it right, and it was a fairly easy touchdown after the catch for Dylan Evans. But yes, just like that, 16-9 in favor of Little Elm, and it just felt like with just in one fell swoop there. That sequence itself took about 20 seconds of game time. So again, key moments in all 3 phases for Little Elm they benefit from. And that was just kind of the backbreaker. West just could not get on track from there. Little Elm was able to get another touchdown later on. This one from John Mateer, the quarterback, had some really, really timely scrambles.
3rd and 11?
Yeah, he converted a 3rd and 11 Denton with a 13-yard run, and then later ran in a 14-yard touchdown. So some impressive resolve for Little after only being able to muster just one touchdown in the first half. It was John Mateer to Vashawn Thomas II. Another 33-yard touchdown that he dropped right over triple coverage. A really, really nice ball and touchdown for Mateer and Thomas. With Plano West, we can get to them in a bit because I do want to talk a little bit more in depth about District 6A, with that district now being in its bye week collectively before district play starts next week for them. There was one other game, though, on the radar, and we actually did talk a little bit about this one on Thursday's podcast. Memorial and Lebanon Trail. Did you see the score for this one, David?
It was a one-point game, I think it was.
It was 34-33 in favor of Lebanon Trail. This is a game that I kind of think of like at the, for Game of the Week at the very start of the year when we were talking Plano and McKinney, and I said that this game, like in recent years, had really kind of ramped up a notch in terms of just the competitiveness and the stakes and just the general entertainment value just between these two schools. And you're kind of seeing a similar thing with Memorial and Lebanon Trail. And I think there's already, these schools are already going to be kind of joined at the hip because they're both fairly upstart programs. They both began playing varsity athletics at the same exact time. Back in, I believe, 2018 was their first season. Whatnot. So there's already that built-in rivalry nature there. And then you've seen all three meetings between these schools have been decided by 5 points or less. Yeah. It was 45-40 in 2018. It was 37-35 last year. And then Friday, 34-33 in favor of Lebanon Trail. And this one went right down to the wire, as that score would seem to indicate. It was a game-winning touchdown with 42 seconds left by Gregory Hatley of Lebanon Trail that put them up by 1 point. They had overcome a big deficit, too. This was one they got down big early. They were down 28-15 at the half.
14-0 after the first quarter.
Yeah, I mean it was a big start for Memorial. They used two quarterbacks in this one. Ethan Lawler, Charlie Flowers. They each had two passing touchdowns apiece. Zion Steptoe had a monster receiving game for the Warriors as well.
Yep.
With Lebanon Trail, they chip away. They got a strong quarterback of their own in Drew Martin. He had 4 total touchdowns in this game.
He also rushed for 90 yards in that game too.
Yes, he was their leading rusher in addition to being their leading passer. We talked about this game last week being a potential, it's early on in the district schedule, so you don't want to say that anything is too definitive right now because obviously things can change, especially given the current climate of things.
Of course.
But this is a game, though, just for tiebreaker purposes later on. Again, if we look at this district and we foresee teams like Memorial, Lebanon Trail kind of being on that bubble as far as a potential fourth seed for the playoffs, I mean, these are the kinds of games that loom large. So for for Lebanon Trail's sake, it's pretty nice to get a head-to-head win over a team that you could eventually be competing for for a playoff spot with.
Absolutely.
But yeah, just these two teams continue to bring the fire, man.
Next year's going to go to 5 overtimes.
Yeah, of all the compelling matchups in Frisco ISD, we talked about Lone Star and Independence and Frisco and Independence and all that. But I mean, just consistently year in year out, Memorial Lebanon Trail just might be pound for pound the most entertaining of the lot. So yeah, big win for the Trailblazers as they started 1-0 in district play. But as far as just news in general, Frisco ISD, one of the big stories though came off the gridiron. So for those who didn't see, there was a story that came down late in the week as far as 5A Division I and basically how they're going to handle the prospect of games that get canceled due to COVID-19. And this is where the UIL's policy, there was no hard fast rule from the UIL on how to handle games that get canceled due to the pandemic. It's basically left up to the hands of the individual district executive committees. And what happened in 5A Division I is kind of an example of the potential chaos or confusion that something like that can create. So news came down. Basically, it's a 2-day story. So there were meetings, I guess, Thursday and Friday. And so for those who have not heard, Denton Ryan, the number 1 ranked team in Class 5A Division I, not in our coverage area, but they're part of that district. So obviously, it's certainly worth mentioning. They will have to forfeit the first 2 games of their district schedule. They had to shut things down for a bit due to COVID-19 related matters within the program. And there was the question as far as what that means, though, with regards to the standings, whether it's going to be a no no contest or a forfeit. Those mean two separate things. So basically it sounds like something was lost in translation in this process because, to read the reporting, from the Morning News, Denton Record Chronicle on this, basically that it sounds like Denton ISD was under the idea that it was going to be one thing, and then the following day a completely different result was kind of thrown in their face. So they were under the impression that those cancellations, which they had to cancel their games against Reedy and Denton High, I believe.
That's correct.
But those are both going to go down as no contest. So it wouldn't be a win, wouldn't be a loss. It would be no penalty. It'd just be a game that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, was the impression that the Denton ISD folks were left with on Thursday. Well, then Friday gets around, and they actually vote on this, and apparently it was voted then by the district, the majority rules, and I guess it sounds like this was one thing that was kind of initiated by Frisco ISD, but the majority voted that it's not going to be a no contest. These are going to be forfeits. So they actually do count as losses. The loss is not just in the sense of, you move to 0-1, but you also lose that game by the 17-point maximum tiebreaker or for point differential allotted in the district. So, it sounds like Denton ISD was a little blindsided by this.
Shocked.
And so, what was your initial reaction to this? Just because, it's obviously, again, each district's going to have its own unique take on how to handle the cancellations. But again, sounds like something was lost in translation because Denton clearly did not think that it was going to be headed in this direction.
Well, it was very shocking. It just, with the way the UIL was just kind of set up this whole season, like with leaving the decision up to each district right there, there's got to be communication lines from the beginning right there, just to have like a specific policy that covers every single little thing that's going to happen, and especially with the forfeits and like the cancellations and stuff like that. So it seemed like that these school districts weren't on the same page at all. Like this school district thought this thing, this school district thinking the other thing. Like there's like no transparency from the beginning at all. So I think if I was like Denton, you're kind of hoping that Frisco ISD would kind of, talk with you about this from the beginning right there whenever you found out about the COVID cases, so you can decide on something right there and then. But to kind of find that out a day later, like that the Frisco schools have met, and now you're meeting the next day and found out that those are going to result in a forfeits right there. That just leaves everybody blindsided. It's
so in the case of Ryan, it's technically it does snap their 52 game regular season winning streak. Yeah. They said they forfeit games versus Reedy and Denton. Technically they have an 0-2 start in district now.
They're going to crawl out of that no problem.
I don't think that, and again, assuming they're able to walk the straight and narrow, and this is the last that they have to deal with regards to the pandemic and whatnot, because I imagine they're probably going to be playing with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder for the rest of the district schedule, particularly when up against one of these Frisco schools. It's technically yes, an 0-2 start, but also again, it's not just them that it's impacting, because again, if this is the rule within the district that all cancellations result in forfeits, you've already seen now another game within Frisco ISD fall through the cracks with Lone Star and Independence, which was a highly anticipated game between two teams that you figure is going to finish in the top three in the district.
For sure.
Well, that game was supposed to be this week. That's getting canceled, and then Independence had to make the decision to cancel that game. So Independence has to forfeit, and then they're 0-1. Lone Star gets the win there. So we'll see. Because listen, it's so early in the season that it would be pretty foolish to just assume that this is the last time that any of these schools will have to cross that bridge.
No.
So we'll see. But already a notable kind of just again mixed messages being sent within the district. But yes, nevertheless, though, any games that are canceled within 5A Division I going forward will result in forfeits.
Yes.
You've already seen it impact some of the teams at the very tippy-top tier of that district. Let's see. Let's talk a little bit of 6A.
Let's do this.
This is a district that, we have all 8 schools in the district are in our coverage area, so naturally we've got a lot of eyeballs on this one. It's a district that, just talking throughout the offseason, I think we fancied this one being a very, very competitive district. A lot of parity top to bottom with, you take out the Irving schools, you throw in those 3 Plano schools, and you expect the competitive pedigree of that district to escalate a bit. So these teams all have at least 2 games in the books. I believe it was Plano and Hebron were the only ones that did not get to play their full 3-game non-district schedule. But they are in their bye week now. They all have a bye week at the same exact time, so they're getting a chance to recharge the batteries before things get going for real next week, and we start district play. I just kind of want to survey these 8 teams right now and just kind of how we're feeling about them before things get going for real. Has your thought process on this district through these first 3 weeks, has anything made it change or whatever? Have any teams maybe exceeded your expectations, or has just the way that you foresaw this district panning out, has anything happened early on that would impact that?
I would say definitely Lewisville has exceeded my expectations so far.
Okay.
Well, we knew the starters that they had coming back on offense with Taylor Green and Armani Winfield and Damian Martinez, who is offensive newcomer this year, but to put up 52, 48, and 51 points through the first 3 games right there.
That's pretty big.
That's pretty big. So whenever that team and Marcus gets together, expect a lot of points.
Yeah, I think with I had entered the year kind of looking at Lewisville and Marcus as potentially being the top 2 in the district. With Marcus, they've played to their paper so far. They're 3-0. They've looked fairly convincing in all 3 games. The offense has been just outstanding. 416 yards per game, top 10 in the area.
Yep.
41.3 points per game. Garrett Nussmeyer, their stud quarterback, the reigning district MVP, he has 910 passing yards and 12 touchdowns. The big thing with them is going to be just monitoring what happens with the run game. That was one of the biggest question marks coming into the season with the graduation of Tyson Edwards, who just went so much in that capacity last season. It's been a little up and down. If you look at their their first couple games with Jesuit and McKinney, and then they finally figured out a little something against Keller Central. It was Gabe Espinoza and Walker Wells. They combined for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns on just 18 carries. So some efficiency to that run game as well.
Sure.
But that's going to kind of be the area to monitor with this Marcus team. You know that they can throw the ball. Nussmeyer is one of the top quarterbacks in the state. They've got a lot of depth at receiver, not just with Cal commit J. Michael Sturdivant, but Dallas Dudley, Tyler Schott. They've got a lot of talent there on the outside. It's going to be a question of, though, what happens, and you have to kind of run a little bit of clock and whatnot. Can you successfully do that on the ground against some of these defenses in 6-6A? And with Lewisville, I mean, like you just said, the offense has been as advertised. We kind of had a sense going in that just given the continuity on that side of the ball, that there could be big things in store, and it's lived up to the expectation so far. They're statistically, that's been the best offense in the district. Almost 600 yards per game. Insanity. Over 50 points per game. Martinez is the leading rusher in the entire Metroplex among 6A programs. 599 yards and already 12 touchdowns. Had to stray from the 5 touchdown per game average that he was on heading into last week, but still.
Oh, it's 50 touchdowns on his radar this year.
Ridiculous numbers being put up by the junior running back with the Farmers. So I don't know who's. I mean, again, I would say maybe on balance, I would have picked Marcus coming into the season as my potential favorite to win the district title. Lewisville, though, man, just the ceiling of that offense, though, is enough to put a scare into anybody in that district. They can score with anybody, Marcus included. They did last year. So I'm anxious to see that game, November 27th, between those two, what happens there. As far as any teams that could potentially shake up that mix, now, Coppell's been a nice story so far. This is a team that you talked about heading into the season, just kind of hoping for much more continuity after having so many young players and so many injuries last season. But man, the impact that KJ Liggins has had has just been such a game changer. We've talked about it in recent weeks on the podcast, but he's actually the leading receiver in the area, I believe, just by 1 yard. But he has had it's been a revelation just what he's done to that passing offense. It's just pick your poison with him on one side, Anthony Black on the other, and even though they lost last week to Highland Park, it sounds like that was still ultimately wound up in the end being a pretty spirited affair.
It came down to a 4th down play by Highland Park with about less than a minute left. 4th down, I think I think the play was, and Dylan Traeger, who's committed to Hawaii, got the 1st down right there. If Coppell would have got that stop right there, turnover and downs, who knows? They could have gone back and got a touchdown knowing that offense right there with that limited amount of time. Walker's already thrown for over 300 yards and 5 touchdowns, so just imagine what he can do with even 45 seconds left in the game.
Coppell's been really solid, though. They had good. The weird stat about Coppell, I was thinking, so they played Mesquite, then they played Saxon, then they played Highland Park.
Sure.
All 3 of those teams were playing their first game of the season. just random fun fact with Coppell. And, if we, I don't know to what extent you look at what can happen when you're playing a team that maybe is, again, trying a lot of stuff out for the very first time on a Friday night this season versus a team that has a bit more under its belt like Coppell does. But they've looked the part of a team that could be in for a bounce back here in the district. So I kind of like where they're headed. With Hebron, I got to see them Thursday in our game of the week against Northwest Eaton. This was not a terribly competitive game. Hebron wins this thing going away 31-7. Big night for their defense. Just turnovers just left and right, especially in the second half as they kind of blew this one open. With Hebron, as far as looking at it, was impressive just because they're so banged up right now. They're missing so many guys. They still have not their projected starting quarterback, Weston Conaway. He's been out. He had a cast on his wrist at the game on Thursday. They haven't had their leading receiver from last season, Nick Frazier. He's got a collarbone injury. They're missing some of their big guys up front. Wesley Douglas, their tight end, Luciano Sweet, an offensive lineman. They didn't play against Eaton. And then one of their standout defensive backs, Mason Williamson, did not play as well. So in a sense, it's kind of tough to gauge what Hebron is right now. They had a game against Denton Geyer that went as most games will against Geyer. That run game was just a little bit too much. They lost that one 56-33. And then they had their second game against Arlington Martin canceled due to the pandemic. So they had a bit of a break before that game against Eaton. But they showed really, really well. The defense did not give any quarter. We talked about the job that Eaton did controlling the clock against Mansfield Legacy, running 84 plays to 30-something for Legacy. Hebron did not give them a chance to get anything established. So really strong stuff by Hebron. The depth and pedigree of that program, one of the things with the pandemic was they had to start basically practicing more kids on both sides of the ball, just so if in the case that they run into something like this again, they'll be more, better prepared for it. It's just one of the changes that teams are having to make, just given the, the current climate and whatnot. But I don't know. I think they're going to work into the mix some fashion. I don't know if it's a playoff team or whatnot, but it's going to depend on just when we actually get to see this team at full strength. Who knows when that's going to be? There's a big game coming up October 30th between them and Flower Mound, in a game that could very well be a potential playoff eliminator. Flower Mound, a team that's had to take on a bit of a different identity this year. For years, it's always just been offense.
Defense this year.
They're getting it done on defense. They were able to win their opener against McKinney Boyd 10-7, which is like the furthest thing from a Flower Mound football score that there is. And then even though they lost last week against Mansfield Timberview, that's a state-ranked team. That's number 7 in 5A Division II, and they actually gave them a game. This was just an 18-13 loss. So to hold that team to just 18 points, they held Boyd's offense just to a touchdown. I take it back. That was trying to remember. I think it was a defensive touchdown that Boyd had in that game. It was a while back. A lot of these games are just running together. Either way, bottom line is Flower Mound's defense has been outstanding, and it all starts up front. Stone Eby, SMU commit, and Colton Vatney, who actually got in on the mix on offense against Timberview. He had a rushing touchdown, one of their stud defensive tackles. So there's a lot of they're having to get it done in a much different fashion. It's a younger offense with a new quarterback, Nick Evers, really promising prospect. He's got some Division I offers already on the table. Parker Clark, standout receiver for them as well. He's got a big role as well. So it's a team that's, again, going to be a bit of a work in progress on that side of the ball. But, so far they're having to get it done in a bit of a different fashion. But they look like a team that's going to be on that radar as well. Problem is that only 4 teams from the district are going to make the playoffs.
I know.
You're going to have a good team that likely gets left out, which is kind of what you assume with this district in recent years. And then there's Plano ISD. What to make of old Plano ISD so far? Because it's there was a lot of talk about they're out from underneath the Allen shadow. They're free from that, and they don't have to worry about that big old boogeyman on their schedule anymore. So what to make of Plano ISD so far? Plano West is 2-1. Plano East is 0-3. Plano is 0-2. And they've all played varying levels of competition, so it's tough to really kind of make heads or tails as to what those records mean when compared to up against each other. I think maybe so far, if I had to pick a team that was maybe a bit further ahead of those 3, maybe Plano East. They showed a little something last week against Jesuits, so I hate to use the whole recency bias thing, but nevertheless, though, they were right there on the doorstep of potentially upsetting a Jesuit team that projects as a district title contender. They were able to. They were down 23-14 at the half, and then some. These are two teams that have put up a lot of points in recent years. I believe it was just a field goal by Plano East was the only point scored in the second half, and they were actually able to get the ball in the red zone in the closing seconds of this game. Ultimately, though, they turned it over on downs. But a spirited effort by Plano East. If we're just talking maybe the best offensive football player in PISD so far, there was a kid with Plano East at the start of the year that head coach Joey McCullough was really, really high on. Said he's one of the best athletes that he's ever coached. And when you think of Joey McCullough and some of the kids that have rolled through that Plano East program, Anthony Hines, Tyler Owens, Trey Jones-Scott, and then you think back to his time at Plano West with Jackson Jeffcoat and all the talent that program had, once upon a time. The praise that he heaped on Ishmael Mahdi, a junior, sounds like just an absolute Swiss Army knife of an offensive talent. And he's been, at least in the games against Allen and Jesuit, he's been just an absolute force in the run game and the receiving game. McCullough said he could even play a little quarterback as well at some point.
What do we got numbers for him so far?
He in last week's game against Jesuit, he had 195 rushing yards. He had 67 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. It kind of reminds me of what they had last year with Trey Jones-Scott, and that Jones-Scott finished the year as their leading rusher and their leading receiver. So it's just going to be about finding ways. You don't want him to wear down, because the grind it's only going to get tougher from here. They're about to run into some really, really talented football teams, and they're going to require, it's going to be a battle of attrition of sorts, and you're just going to have to find other ways to just generate offense. Now, they do have a quarterback, Dylan Hayden, who's in his second year in that system. He is also a threat with his legs as well. He's had a 100-yard rushing game already this season, too, so he can hit you both ways. They've just got to find ways, though, to get other guys, just to find ways to generate offense beyond those two, because it's just, it's still so early in the season, and you've got a lot of really, really important football games left. But I don't know what they showed against Jesuit. They were in the game for a half with Lake Highlands. So
Lake Highlands is probably going to finish 10-0 in the regular season.
Lake Highlands is a really good team, as Plano found out last week as well. So I don't know. It's tough to say right now, but I don't know. Plano East, like what they showed against a Jesuit team that could contend for a district championship over in that district, they might be a little bit further in front with Plano West, who I got to see finally up close and in person. With West, they basically had to think outside their comfort zone in that game against Little Elm. Through the first 2 weeks, their MO has just been to run the ball. Tabron Yates. He's been, outstanding. He went over 100 yards in their first 2 games of the season. Little Elm was ready for that, though, and they bottled that aspect up. And, Plano West, for the first time all season, they had to throw the ball a bit more. They attempted 34 passes in this game after a total of, I believe, 17 passes attempted in the first 2 games. So definitely having to think outside your comfort zone, but at the same time, that's part of what you're going to need to do in this district, because there's going to be times, when you're having to play a bit of catch-up there. So you have to know that you can at least develop that aspect of your offense to where it's not going to feel uncomfortable when you have to, let Greg Drawn go out there and throw the ball around a bit. And it was fine in that capacity. They showed some good stuff in the passing game, but again, they just had a really tough time just stringing together just enough consistent, sustained drives against.
Say that 5 times fast.
I can't. I'm already running out of gas. With Plano West, I'm just kind of curious to see again. With Wiley and North Mesquite, those two teams, maybe where they're at right now, not necessarily the caliber of opponent that you're going to see in the coming weeks with the Lewisvilles and the Marcuses and the Coppells and whatnot. Yeah. But they're at least in a good spot with the program as far as showing just some tangential growth. And the big thing is for them, you look back at their district campaign last season, they were in several games, even though they only won 1 game on the season that come from behind victory against Plano East. They still put a scare into Plano, and they still put a scare into McKinney. But those games got away from them in the fourth quarter just due to kind of just mental miscues, executional lapses, and whatnot. So if they can just clean up that part and whatnot, so maybe they were able to make a little bit of noise, because the defense has certainly showed early on that there's promise there.
The Coach Suckup's got them headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
I just remember this is a team that lost how many games in a row before
34.
So to have that, to just see the little things, just to show like, hey, we're, like these are the baby steps that we're taking to get in the right direction. It might take maybe like another 1 or 2 years to kind of, for all the pieces to come together, for the system to come together, for everybody to kind of start believing in our program, to gain some confidence. It's definitely headed in the right direction.
There's definitely a different vibe around that that program than there has been in recent years. So you at least like to see that.
Yeah.
And then there's Plano, which it stinks that Plano was only able to play 2 non-district games. Just I think when it's a brand new system, brand new head coach, brand new everything at Plano. I just think that the more reps you get on the field, it's all the more important for programs in that situation. So it does stink that they had their second game against Rowlett get canceled.
Yeah.
They've essentially played the same game twice. It's basically Groundhog Day over there with Plano Wildcats. There was that incredible game against McKinney, which we talked about a ton, obviously after the fact, and it was our game of the week and lived up to the billing.
Yep.
Plano erases a 21-point deficit, and then McKinney has the crazy kickoff return for the touchdown and the ensuing 2-point conversion. They win 36-35. So you're just kind of left wondering, okay, well, which Plano team is it? Is it the team that got down big early on, or is it the one that just could not be stopped in the second half? And you see then against Lake Highlands, a team that certainly has developed a bit of a good thing within itself. That's a program that is certainly confident in its identity, and they know what they're about. And that's a team that could be, like you said earlier, they could be looking at a 10-0 regular season. And they just took it to Plano. This wasn't even a contest. So it was kind of similar to the McKinney game in the sense that they got down really big early on. I believe it was 42-14 at the half.
Yeah, and they already had like over 400 yards of offense during that time too. And actually, Plano, I think they trailed only 14-10 in that game.
Okay.
I was kind of reading through the play-by-play after Telman Hines had a 1-yard touchdown, but then Lake Highlands just got the momentum back. They did what they did with all that experience right there. Mitch Colson, their dual-threat quarterback, he already has 9 rushing touchdowns through 3 games. Not passing touchdowns, rushing touchdowns for a quarterback.
He, the running back, Noel Whitehead, nobody's had, it was Poteet, Plano East, and Plano, was their non-district schedule, and no team mustered a response. I believe in all 3 games, Colson and Whitehead had over 100 yards rushing. That's wild.
Yeah.
Plano had a really, really tough go. I believe 42-24 was the final there. So Plano's 0-2, and again, you kind of have to figure out now, it happened once, now it happens twice, these slow starts. So it's just, you can't afford to fall behind, especially
good habits,
especially against the caliber of offenses they're going to see in that district with Marcus, Lewisville, Coppell, and whatnot. Even Plano East offense is number 9 in the area right now. I'm not sure I would have expected that coming into the season. 410 yards per game
against those 3 teams that they faced so far.
Yeah, they had Allen on the friggin' schedule. With Plano, it's again, I'm not really sure what this team is, and again, they only have two games under their belt, so that stinks. But they just got to figure out what's happening early on in these games that's putting them behind the 8 ball. Because as you're seeing, there's a lot of people watching this that are Dallas Cowboy fans. You realize what a plight it is when you put your team down at a deficit continuously, week in, week out, early on in these games. So they've got to get things corrected early on as far as just the focus and attention to detail as far as executing early on in these games. So let's see. I don't know. That's about all I had for this district. Again, my overall take on it probably hasn't changed a ton from where I was at in the preseason. I still like Marcus and Lewisville as the 2 best. I think Coppell's better than I expected him to be, because I guess I just didn't realize just how much of a game changer Liggins would be to the mix. So I think that team's probably a little bit higher than I otherwise would have had him. Need to see Hebron get healthy before kind of making a judgment on where they're at. I think them and Flower Mound are probably the at least right now, the top 2 candidates for that last playoff spot. So that means right now we could be right back in the same spot that we were last year with Plano ISD. We'll see. As for the sake of extending my coverage a little bit, during the postseason. Hope I'm wrong. I like to cover high school football as long as I can. So hopefully Plano can get a team in the playoffs. But it's been it's a bit of an up and down start for PISD on the whole. So we'll see what that all means. They get started in district play next week. We'll see what happens.
Anything could happen.
Should be fun. So yes, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. We'll be back on Thursday to break down our game of the week and some other marquee games on the coverage docket. A bit of a lighter week. We got a lot of districts that are on bye this week. So, but nevertheless, we will see what is in store later on in the week. So until then, folks, you take care, and we will talk to y'all later.